Good afternoon. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm doing great. My name is Tom Sheppard. I am a member of the uh, New Settlement Parent Action Committee Steering Committee, and we would all like to welcome you to the Bronx Parent Mayoral Education Forum. Um, this forum is in collaboration with Community Education Councils 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, the New Settlement Parent Action Committee, the African Democratic Club, and STEMDUP Institute Incorporated. So I wanted to just take a moment and just kind of share with you kind of the rules and the way this is going to work. So we're going to first, I want to start by just asking you, how would you like to be referred to? Is it Ms. Wiley,
Oh,
Candidate Wiley?
please call me Maya. I'm very informal.
Very
I'm
good.
perfectly comfortable with Maya, but I appreciate you asking.
Well, thank you, Maya. I appreciate that also. So what we're going to do is uh, we're going to start this by asking you if you could please provide a 2-minute opening statement. We do have a series of 12 questions. We would ask that your response be 1 minute for each question. If you need a few extra seconds, that's fine. And then we'll ask you if you could please provide a 1-minute closing statement. Okay. So with that said,
Wonderful.
Ms. Maya, the floor is yours for a 1-minute opening statement.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm going to try to be very brief. I am a longtime civil rights lawyer and racial justice advocate. I've spent 30 years of my career. But a big reason around why I became a civil rights lawyer and racial justice advocate is because I'm Black in America. And I say that simply. When I was a little kid, my parents were civil rights activists, but I went to the neighborhood, segregated, overcrowded, underfunded elementary school in my neighborhood. It was all Black. I remember my neighbors and my best friends starting to disappear with displacement when the rents went up and folks' income could not cover it. So for me, those were very personal experiences. It wasn't only my parents' work, but I came to Columbia Law School knowing I was always coming back to the city I loved. We lived here when I was a baby on the Lower East Side before moving to DC. But the civil rights work for me was about every issue because we don't live single issue lives. And I worked on everything from more education funding for public schools to access to healthcare and more. But I'm running for mayor because I'm also a mom, and between my two kids, both of them, I have 15 years in the public school system in this city, including elementary school, navigating middle school and high school processes of admissions, something I felt like I needed a PhD for, even though I had a law degree. But I will tell you that I'm running for mayor because I know this is a city where we can finally start to invest in our communities in ways that ensure that our kids can stay here and live here with dignity. Because that's a real question. That's up for grabs, and I'm running for mayor to change it. Oh, Tom, I think you're muted.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right. So our first question is related to language access. So Maya, how would you propose supporting and engaging families that schools have had difficulty connecting with due to language and or cultural barriers?
Hmm. Critical question. We're a city that has over 800 languages. My own elementary school in my neighborhood where my daughters went had 157 if you encountered indigenous languages in the school building. A big part of it to me is I'm a big proponent of the community school model where there is actual relationship with community-based organizations that the school is also part of the community and the community is part of the school, and that's a model for building up language access, because we have so many languages and the Department of Education can't fill all the gaps. But it's also listening to what we're hearing from parents about what helps them communicate more effectively with their schools. I have heard a request, for example, using more mobile technology for updates for parents with different language that are monolingual language speakers and need translation. You know, from my perspective, it's about those partnerships that find the most effective pathways, because there is a relationship beyond the school building, and that's critically important.
Thank you. So the next two questions are really going to be around what we are calling the new normal for schools. And the first of those questions is, if elected mayor and if this pandemic continues into your administration, what is your vision for supporting schools from day one?
Mm. So first of all, by making sure that we have a clear plan that engages parents as well as teachers and principals in what that plan is, to ensure that our kids get the education they need, and safely and effectively, with parents able to make informed decisions. Because I know as a parent, I'm going to make the decisions I feel comfortable with for my children. But that means parents have to have opt in, opt out around how we're doing schools, hybrid models, in person, having real choice points, but in a way that is clear, that is collaborative, and that makes it very transparent what the situation is. And we didn't have enough of that over the course of the last year. But it also means technology, and we can talk more about that. But I worked on universal broadband issues and digital divide issues before, as a racial justice advocate inside City Hall and out, and I know how to get that done. But it does require concerted attention.
Thank you. So, and I'm actually glad you brought up technology, because the second question here is, this pandemic has shed a light on a digital divide that has had a disproportionately negative impact on students and families here in the Bronx by impeding the quality of instruction our children receive during remote learning. Will you commit to technology-rich schools and communities in which each child has a device and broadband access in school and at home as part of our new normal in education in terms of curricula and usage?
Yes, 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 yes. I hope I got enough yeses in there. But look, as a racial justice advocate, digital divide was an area of mine before I ever went into City Hall. When I went into City Hall in 2014, the mayor said, "Universal broadband, that's yours." I said, "Good." I have no idea how to do this, by the way. Let me be honest, no idea. You know why? Because no one has anywhere in this country. We have failed miserably. But what I did was created partnerships. I found the revenue within city government. We got every single unit of Queensbridge houses free broadband that the city paid for. I got that done. And I laid out plans to do that in major public housing developments in every borough. That was just a starting point. It didn't happen after I left. It fell apart, even though we had laid the plans and made the announcement, including for the South Bronx, by the way. But here's the thing. That's just about time, attention, and will, and putting your money where your mouth is. We actually could have done so much more in the past year. In fact, would have been farther down the road if we had executed on the things that the plans I laid. I left in 2016, but this is not done. That's not finished. And I already have money, $1 billion in my New Deal New York plan around technology and digital access, but we got a lot more to do, and a lot more opportunity out of the federal government, by the way, with additional resources that are going to come into the city for broadband. So that's what we have to deploy it to.
Thank you so much. So the next question and the next issue here is mental health and healing centered schools.
Yeah.
So students in the Bronx have been disproportionately affected by trauma, and even more so during this pandemic.
Yeah.
For example, the Healing Centered Schools Roadmap lays out a variety of trauma-informed and responsive trauma-informed and trauma-responsive practices conducive to the emotional well-being of students, families, communities, and educators. What would your approach be to systematically supporting all Bronx students uh, in having healing-centered spaces for all involved, especially in historically underserved neighborhoods where trauma was often pervasive even before this pandemic?
Well, thank you for that. I'm a trauma survivor. Watched my father die when I was 9 years old. I was fortunate because my mother had both the sense of the importance of trauma informed care, but she also had some resources to get that to my brother and I. I know how important it is. I won't go through all the long stories of also parents I've talked to, including in the Bronx, a home health aide whose son terrified to leave the apartment, except she had to go to work and she was a single mom. She had to force him out the door. I mean, that's the kind of trauma we're talking about. But in my gun violence prevention platform, which was the first policy proposal I put out, I, for that reason, gun violence, put in the platform in communities with high rates of gun violence that we will put in the school cognitive and behavioral and dialectical behavioral therapy, because they are significantly effective and researched at being trauma informed care for students. All the metrics are good. You know, violence rates come down, violent behavior, graduation rates go up just with these two kinds of therapies. So I've already said that, and I have been saying this publicly. It's going to be in my education plan. Student support teams in schools that also include a social worker. We have to get the number of school psychologists up. And again, I'm a big believer in community-based schools. So the also making sure they're community-based partnerships and wraparound services for the whole family. Now, I am going to continue. That's just the starting point. But I've already committed to those two things because we don't get this year back academically if we don't actually recognize you have to treat the whole child as a whole being. And that also includes the child's family and the school community.
Thank you so much. So the next area that the next issue that we really wanted to bring up was equity and inclusion. So the next question is, as diverse as the Bronx is, our communities are segregated by race, gender, and ethnicity. What is your plan to ensure that all Bronx schools have a diverse student body, faculty, and staff that are culturally responsive and sensitive to their students?
Mm-hmm. Ooh, there's so many different parts to this. So, but let me just say three ones there. And I co-chaired the School Diversity Advisory Group, worked with folks like Misha Porter, but also, you know, Asia Johnson, some wonderful educators from the Bronx, as well as parents and students. But here's the thing, like we have to recognize one, yes, it does matter how we are resourcing our schools, particularly our schools that are under-resourced. And that does mean looking at how we're deploying resources so that every last school has what it needs to be effective and to see every single one of our students as exceptional. It does include diversifying teachers. And I've got a plan, by the way, which I haven't announced, but I said it last night at UFT, to hire 1,000 new teachers for the classroom to bring down class sizes, particularly where they're needed most, because we know we have 618 schools in our system that are grossly overcrowded. And guess where they are? Disproportionately in the Bronx, disproportionately in Southeast Queens, in other words, all the communities of color that were also hard hit by COVID. So we are also going to make sure that we're dealing with those class sizes, because that's also going to improve the educational experience of our kids, allow us to do more individualized learning, more innovation in our schools. But the other thing is that we have to remove the barriers to our kids getting what they need in terms of the schools they choose. So we're going to eliminate discriminatory admissions practices. That's critical to making sure that our kids get real options. But again, it really starts, and we said this in the School Diversity Advisory Group reports, we got to invest in all our schools being exceptional places and all our kids being seen as exceptional. And in a Wiley administration, that means we're going straight with the resources and supports directly into the schools that have been far too long under-resourced.
Thank you so much. And the next question along this line um, is in 2019, the Department of Education adopted a culturally responsive and sustaining education framework. What is your vision for a practical short and long term application of this framework with students, families, communities, and schools?
Yeah. So one is to start implementing aggressively. And that also means the partnerships to get it done right. Because I think if we're really going to be culturally responsive and responsible, it means there's also active engagement and partnership with the school community. That means the parents, that means what it can look like. Because all our schools, we don't have a one size fits all, right? We have different demographics in different schools. So we also want to make sure there's real participation and it is responsive to the demographics of the community. But like I'm a parent, I chose a consortium high school for my older daughter who, because when I toured the school, Haitian Revolution was going to be a history class she was going to get. Haitian Revolution. I didn't get that in school. That there was Alice Walker was on the bookshelf. Things that for me and for my family were culturally relevant and responsive, right? And actually introducing her to things I wanted her to have. So we need some opportunity to make sure we're investing in teachers' ability to deliver it, as well as some innovation and creativity that listens to and hears our parents and our communities, and in terms of how we're partnering to make sure we're getting it done right. And those will become metrics by which we are holding people accountable so that we're actually measuring and being transparent about the implementation, because that's going to also enable us to course correct when we make mistakes, because it's inevitable when we're doing something new that we will. So rather than shy away from it, I'm going to say we will. But what we're going to do is be honest about it and fix it when it happens, because we're going to have a relationship.
Thank you so much. So, one of the things you just said, a word that you just used was accountability. And that actually is important for a question in our next section, which is special education, right?
Mhm.
So, the Department of Education has a long history of special education complaint cases, with an
Yeah.
estimated 11,000 filed in the last school year alone. These cases take almost a year on average to resolve, well beyond the 75-day legal deadline as required by law.
Yeah.
What is your intentional goal to improve the special education appeals process to ensure services and supports, which are mandated under the IDEA Act, are provided to our students with special needs, and what accountability measures would you implement to hold the DOE accountable for compliance?
Mhm. Well, so this question is one I have gotten from so many parents. And I have friends and have seen up close and personal just how hard it is. And we know it disadvantages our low income parents who can't float money, right, during the course of this year to make sure their kids are getting what they need. And so this is an equity issue. It's a racial equity issue too. It also covers different communities, but it begins with actually having the measurement and the metric, right? We know what the compliance means. I'm a lawyer. It starts with having an administration that says you will comply. This is the law. We're going to come into compliance. Now, that means we're going to track it. We're going to set the benchmarks to bring it down. But it also means we're going to go in and say, find the points in the system that makes it so broken. Because we already know it's not working and it's not complying. So by first enforcing it, and a big part of it is going to be saying at a certain point we're just going to pull the trigger, and folks are going to get the resources they're asking for, because we must comply. But I'm also the kind of person as a leader who says, tell me what's getting in your way, because if something is getting in your way, I'll remove the barrier. Like, that's what you can do as mayor, say, oh, we'll get that out of your way. When I had folks telling us we couldn't do broadband access and public housing, I said, I'll move that barrier out of your way. That's not real. You just need someone in a position of power in city government that gets that out of your way. So we'll get it out of your way. And then
Thank
no more
you.
excuses.
Oh, thank you so much. So, Um, uh, the next question here, you really did speak about like uh, education and the way this looks for underserved communities, right? So, uh, one question that the next question I'm going to ask is, um, over the past 2 decades, schools that provide vocational and technical training have been systematically removed as options for students in the Bronx. What will you do to provide middle and high school students with better access to career and technical education opportunities?
Yeah, this is another one I've both been hearing repeatedly. And by the way, I had my godson lives in Soundview. I dropped out of high school. We got him back in part because we were able to put him in a high school that was internship based, which is essentially a version of that. But I wanted to see more intentionality around an internship based school that met his interests, right? That wasn't just random, select from a panoply of internship opportunities. So this model exists. We just need to expand upon it, and we need to create the mechanisms for it. That's some of the resourcing that I'm talking about. But education innovation, we flatten the box. One, COVID is awful. I don't want to be in the situation we're in right now, but there's one opportunity that it has created is it's not just about getting out of the box anymore and what education is. COVID flattened it. So I'm going to come in as the mayor that says, all right, the box is already flattened. So we're already out of the box. So the question is how we're reimagining our school system so that it's actually meeting the needs of our kids. And we're going to put our money where our mouth is, because money is coming into the school system now, both from the state and from the federal government. I've put some additional resources in the form of capital construction budget so we can actually build some new spaces for some new kinds of schools. So that's something that we can absolutely do. And I've talked about the P-TECH model, which is, technology-based high school that also comes with 2 years of associate's degree in college. It's a partnership with IBM. These are models that we have. We just have to do it. So to me, it's just about the will. We've got the wisdom. We just need the will.
Thank you. And the next you spoke a minute ago about partnerships with community-based organizations, and our next question uh, in this area would be that schools in the Bronx are exploring urban agriculture by participating in programs such as FISH, Food Innovation, Sustainability, and Health.
Yep.
Would you support establishing and expanding these programs by creating agricultural hubs in elementary, middle, and high schools in partnership with community based organizations and the City and State University of New York?
So I love that model. I'm also someone who's done food justice work. Dennis Derrick, who has Corbin Hill Farms, and I've also been talking about this because it's like Black farmers, trying to increase Black farmers in New York State, but also the food systems in the city that actually are fundamentally about not just both. Anyway, I'll stop. I take more than a minute when you all get me excited. So let me pull myself back. Short answer is yes. And my brother actually did this in a built environment programs also for kids who are interested in architecture. I mean, the reality is we've got to have all these kind of project-based learning models that actually make education fun and that teach our kids so much of the critical thinking skills and other things that benefit them, including urban agriculture. I mean, my kids had a science project in their school because a parent happened to just do it herself and brought in seeds, and then everybody got involved and tried to figure out how to create these planters like off in the side of the playground. It was amazing, but it was like elbow grease. So the fact that we can actually have these partnerships to do this intentionally and bring project-based learning, because I think we should be doing it on food systems, absolutely, and urban agriculture, but we should be doing it on architecture. We should be doing it on technology. There are all these ways we can do project-based learning. Environmental health in terms of asthma rates. Some of the most innovative education programs are hands-on, and then kids are applying science, they're applying math. So I get all excited about the opportunities, and my kids, that's all they wanted. They were like, give me hands-on. and I'll do the math. So I just think we have to be thinking about innovating in these ways, and these partnerships are critical ways we can do it.
Thank you so much. So the last two questions here are around governance. Uh, so um, the first one is going to be just like a really quick one, right? So, would you support an amendment to New York State education law that would allow for additional elected parent members to serve on the city school board or the panel for educational policy?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of making sure that we are creating more voice. I want students to have voice. I think the fact that students are ex officio is wrong on the PEP because they have a huge stake in what's happening. And I want to see more student voice and engagement as well. I mean, so the short answer is we want parent engagement. It's exactly what strengthens schools. Parents have to have meaningful and real voice. So I'm absolutely open to that. I haven't seen the actual proposal, but we have already been saying that we have to transform how we're engaging parents and how we value and have real power for parents. And we did this informally as a school diversity advisory group where we had parents actively, not both on the school diversity group, but with real voice. And when they told us we had to go to meetings or there were things we had to do differently, we did. We did, as with student groups. And it strengthened us and it deepened our recommendations to do it. So I don't see how we have an education system that works if we don't have deep parental engagement.
Thank you. And our there's one other question, and then we'll ask you for your closing statement. So, our last question here is school location co-locations, mergers, and closures are very problematic in the Bronx. The timelines for these changes in school utilization happen on very compressed timelines with little or no input from parents until after the change has been approved by the PEP and school communities are left to develop a plan. Will you commit to amending Chancellor's Regulation A190 in a way where every significant change in school utilization must include a utilization plan from school communities, the community at large, and include education council approval before proceeding with a vote from the PEP? And what would this change look like for you?
Well, thank you for raising it. I'm well aware of the problem. I admit that I have not had direct experience with the process, but it is one that I take very seriously because, again, you know, these space issues, co-locations, all of the utilization, we've talked about overcrowding. I mean, one of the things I'm excited about is creating more parental involvement, engagement, and voice. And frankly, teachers and principals have been frustrated and upset by it as well, right? So frankly, all the stakeholders are saying it's a problem, which means it's got to get fixed. One of the opportunities we also have, and I just want to call it out, but is, you know, because we flatten the box, but also because we have vacancy issues in the city, we have resources. I'm saying I'm putting $10 billion on the table to build things we need built and fix things we need fixed. And I've been explicit about that being in communities that have been hit hard by COVID, which are the same communities that were hit hard by unemployment before COVID struck, or a lack of affordable housing, school overcrowding, segregation, under-resourcing. So that means that the Bronx is a critical place of concern and focus for investment, but we have said that we will have a collaborative process to get there. Have we figured it all out? No, but here's why. Because we're going to have a collaborative process to say what will work, what will meet your needs. So I don't have all the answers. I'll just say I'm committed to creating the process where there's real voice to say what will make this work so that there's real community voice in utilization and planning so that it works well and effectively for our kids. And I'm deeply committed to that.
So thank you for taking the time to answer our questions. So at this time, I would like to give you a 1 minute opportunity for a closing statement.
Well, first, let me just thank you. As I said, I'm a mother and I really can't separate being either a Black woman or a Black woman with 2 kids who are 20 and 17 when I look through both our lens of opportunity and also what has been deeply broken. So many of the things you've been frustrated with are the same things I've been frustrated with as a parent, as a resident, as someone who is a Black and female in this city, and that also knows that we have gotten so much done with so little despite the challenges. And so now is the opportunity for us to change everything, to transform, but do it in a way where we're pulling together. So these points about voice and process and partnership are not fluffy to me. They are as actually where I come from as a civil rights lawyer and advocate from an organizing background. We do it better when we do it together and when folks have a real seat at the table. And that's my commitment, because I know we can not just recover from COVID, but we can actually fix what ailed us before COVID struck. And that's my commitment.
So Maya, I would like to, on behalf of the Bronx Parent Leaders Advocacy Group, the New Settlement Parent Action Committee, the African Democratic Club, STEMDUP Institute, and most importantly, our community education councils for District 7, District 8, District 9, District 10, District 11, and District 12. Thank you for taking the opportunity to answer our questions. And we wish you well and have a great day.
Thank you. And thank you for giving me the time. I deeply appreciate it. And I love the questions and I love the ideas. So be safe, be well, and I look forward to continuing to work with you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Have a good day.